The morning sun hung low over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the neatly trimmed lawns and picket fences that defined the neighborhood. The air carried the faint hum of sprinklers and the sweet Thames of blooming jasmine, a rhythm of suburban life that seemed, at first glance, unbreakable. But beneath this polished surface, a storm was brewing, one that would unravel the fragile threads holding the community together. Imagine yourself standing on the edge of your driveway, coffee in hand, as the first shouts echo down the street, a voice sharp enough to slice through the morning calm. That voice belonged to Karen Whitaker, a woman whose name had become synonymous with chaos in Willow Creek. Karen stood in the middle of Elm Street, her arms flailing like a conductor of discord, her face flushed a deep crimson. She wore a crisp white blouse, its edges starched to perfection, but her composure was anything but orderly. Her target was a cedar fence, newly erected along the property line of 214 Elm, the home of Daniel Harper, a quiet landscaper who had moved in 6 months prior. The fence was sturdy, its rich wood gleaming under the sunlight, a testament to Daniel's meticulous craftsmanship. To Karen, however, it was an affront, a personal insult carved into the landscape of her domain. "You think you can just slap this monstrosity up without my approval?" Karen's voice cracked like a whip, drawing neighbors to their windows. Her heels clicked against the asphalt as she paced, pointing an accusing finger at the fence. "This is a violation, a blatant disregard for HOA rules. I'm the president, and I say it comes down today." Her words were laced with venom, each syllable designed to wound. Daniel stood on his porch, arms crossed, his weathered face betraying no emotion. He was a man of few words, but the tension in his jaw spoke volumes. The conflict had begun weeks earlier, though few could pinpoint its exact spark. Some whispered it was jealous of Karen's pristine lawn, paled in comparison to Daniel's vibrant garden, bursting with roses and lavender. Others suspected it was control. Karen had ruled the Willow Creek HOA with an iron grip for 3 years, her clipboard a scepter, her fines a guillotine. Every mailbox height, every shade of exterior paint, every blade of grass fell under her scrutiny. Daniel's fence, built to keep his rescue dog safe, hadn't been submitted for her approval. To Karen, this was not an oversight. It was rebellion. As Karen ranted, her voice grew louder, pulling more neighbors into the fray. Mrs. Callahan, a retired schoolteacher, peeked through her blinds, her lips pursed in disapproval not at Daniel, but at Karen's theatrics. Across the street, the Patel family stood on their lawn, their teenage son recording the scene on his phone, a smirk tugging at his lips. The air thickened with the scent of warm asphalt and the faint buzz of cicadas, a backdrop to the growing tension. Karen's words tumbled out in a torrent, accusing Daniel of undermining the neighborhood's aesthetic integrity, of disrespecting the covenant we all signed. She waved a crumpled copy of the HOA bylaws, its pages dog-eared from years of weaponized use. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low but steady, cutting through Karen's tirade like a blade through silk. "The fence is on my property, Karen. I checked the survey, it's legal." His words were simple, but they landed with the weight of a challenge. Karen froze, her eyes narrowing to slits. For a moment, the street was silent, save for the distant bark of Daniel's dogs. Then Karen laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that sent a chill down Mrs. Callahan's spine. "Your property," Karen sneered, stepping closer to Daniel's yard. "You don't know where your property ends and mine begins. That fence is over the line, and I'll prove it." She turned to the crowd, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "This man thinks he's above us. He's tearing apart the fabric of our community." Her words were absurd, yet they carried a strange power, sowing doubt among the onlookers. A few nodded, their faces clouded with uncertainty. Others, like the Patels, rolled their eyes, but the division was palpable. Karen's next move was audacious. She marched to the edge of Daniel's yard, her heels sinking into the soft earth, and planted a metal stake into the ground, inches from the fence. A bright orange ribbon fluttered from its top, a garish claim to territory. "This," she declared, "is where my land starts, and that fence is coming down, or I'll have it torn out myself." The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that seemed to suck the air from the street. Daniel's hands clenched into fists, but he remained still, his eyes locked on Karen's. The neighborhood was no stranger to Karen's outbursts, but this was different. Her claim to Daniel's land was bold, unhinged, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of a man who had, until now, avoided conflict. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Had Karen lost her mind, or did she have proof? The scent of damp earth rose from the spot where she'd driven the stake, mingling with the faint perfume of her lavender lotion, a jarring contrast to her aggression. Daniel's dogs barked furiously from behind the fence, their voices a chorus of defiance. As the morning wore on, Karen's tactics grew more chaotic. She called an emergency HOA meeting, summoning residents to the community center that afternoon. Flyers appeared on mailboxes, their text screaming in bold capitals, "Protect our neighborhood, stop the fence invasion." She knocked on doors, her voice a blend of charm and menace, urging neighbors to take her side. Some, like Mr. Henderson, a nervous accountant, agreed out of fear. Others, like the Patels, slammed their doors, their loyalty firmly with Daniel. By noon, Willow Creek was a tinderbox. Neighbors who once shared lemonade now eyed each other with suspicion. The rhythm of their lives, mornings of dog walks, evenings of barbecues, had been disrupted, replaced by a constant struggle to choose sides. Imagine yourself caught in this web, your quiet street transformed into a battleground. Karen's stake stood like a sentinel, its orange ribbon fluttering in the breeze, a symbol of her audacity. Daniel, meanwhile, retreated to his garage, his tools clinking softly as he worked, his mind already turning to a plan. The sun climbed higher, its heat pressing down on the neighborhood, but the real fire burned in the hearts of its residents. Karen's aggressive land grab had ignited outrage. But it was only the beginning. The fence fiasco, as the Patels would later call it, was a spark that would set Willow Creek ablaze, dividing friends, testing loyalties, and pushing one man to the edge of retribution. The afternoon sun dipped low over Willow Creek, painting the community center's brick facade in hues of amber and gold. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and the faint creak of folding chairs as neighbors settled into uneasy rows. The rhythm of their lives had been upended, replaced by a constant struggle to navigate the chaos Karen Whitaker had unleashed. Imagine yourself seated among them, the hum of whispered conversations buzzing in your ears. As Daniel Harper stood quietly at the back, his calloused hands tucked into his pockets, The HOA meeting was about to begin, and with it, the next chapter. Of a war that had already fractured the neighborhood, Karen took the podium. Her clipboard clutched like a shield, her eyes scanning the room with predatory precision. She wore a navy blazer now, its sharp lines a stark contrast to the disarray she'd sown that morning. The orange ribbon from her stake still planted defiantly in Daniel's yard peeked out of her purse, a silent taunt. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice smooth but edged with steel. "We're here to address a grave violation that threatens our community's harmony." Her words were calculated, designed to stoke fear and loyalty in equal measure. She projected a grainy photo of Daniel's fence onto the wall, its cedar planks looming like a fortress in her narrative as Karen spoke. Daniel's mind was elsewhere, sifting through the events of the past few hours. After Karen's morning outburst, he'd retreated to his garage, where the scent of sawdust and motor oil grounded him. There, among his tools, he'd found an old property survey tucked in a filing cabinet, its edges yellowed but its lines clear. The survey confirmed what he'd told Karen. His fence stood firmly on his land, but her claim to part of his yard gnawed at him. It was absurd, yet her confidence suggested she had something up her sleeve, something he needed to uncover. Presentation grew bolder. She produced a document, waving it like a flag of conquest. "This," she declared, "is my property survey, proving that Mr. Harper's fence encroaches on my land." The paper was crisp, its ink too fresh for a document supposedly years old. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some skeptical, others alarmed. Mr. Henderson nodded vigorously, his loyalty to Karen unwavering, while Mrs. Callahan's eyes narrowed, her teacher's instinct sniffing out a lie. The Patels, seated near the front, exchanged glances. Their son's phone was still recording, capturing every word. Daniel stepped forward, his boots scuffing the linoleum floor. "That survey's fake," he said, his voice calm but firm, slicing through Karen's momentum. The room fell silent, the air heavy with anticipation. "I've got my own survey done when I bought the house. It shows my fence is legal, and I'm willing to bet yours doesn't hold up." His words were a gauntlet thrown, not just at Karen, but at the entire neighborhood. Imagine yourself in that moment, the tension coiling like a spring, as Karen's smile faltered, only to harden into a mask of defiance. "You're calling me a liar?" Karen's voice rose, her composure cracking. "I've lived here for 10 years. I know this land better than some interloper." The word dripped with disdain, but Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to the crowd, his gaze steady. "I'm taking this to the county. If Karen's survey is real, let it stand. If not, she's got no claim." His words were simple, but they shifted the room's energy. The Patels clapped softly, and even Mr. Henderson looked uncertain, his fingers twitching nervously. That evening, Daniel sat at his kitchen table. The survey spread before him, its lines a map of his resolve. The scent of roasted garlic lingered from his dinner, a small comfort in the storm. He'd called a friend, a lawyer named Clara, who specialized in property disputes. Over the phone, her voice was crisp, like the rustle of autumn leaves. "If Karen's survey is forged, there's a loophole we can exploit," Clara said. "Adverse possession. If you can prove she's been using your land without permission, you could claim her property instead." The idea was audacious, a legal counterstrike that turned Karen's aggression against her. Daniel spent the next days digging deeper. He visited the county records office, where the air smelled of dusty paper and ink. There, he found Karen's deed on a discrepancy. Her property line didn't extend as far as she claimed, and the survey she'd waived at the meeting wasn't registered. It was a forgery, bold and sloppy, a testament to her arrogance. Armed with this, Daniel began to plan. He'd file for adverse possession, arguing that Karen's stake and her years of overreaching mowing passed her line. Planting shrubs on his side gave him a claim to her land. It was a long shot, but Clara's confidence fueled his resolve. Meanwhile, the neighborhood rallied around him. The Patels organized a group chat dubbed Fence Fighters, where residents shared stories of Karen's tyranny, fines for unapproved birdhouses, threats over holiday lights. Mrs. Callahan offered to testify about Karen's bullying, her voice trembling with years of pent-up frustration. Even Mr. Henderson, swayed by the forged survey's exposure, sent Daniel a hesitant text. "I'm sorry. Let me know how I can help." The air in Willow Creek shifted, carrying the scent of rebellion. Like fresh-cut grass after a storm, Karen, sensing the tide turning, doubled down. She posted more flyers, accusing Daniel of land theft and slandering an honest homeowner. She patrolled Elm Street, her heels clicking like a metronome, glaring at anyone who dared meet her eyes. But her grip was slipping. At night, Daniel's dogs barked less, as if sensing their owner's growing strength. The orange ribbon on Karen's stake began to fray, its edges curling in the wind, a symbol of her unraveling control. Daniel's plan took shape under Clara's guidance. He gathered evidence, photos of Karen's shrubs on his side, testimonies from neighbors about her oversteps, and the county's damning records. The adverse possession claim was risky. Courts rarely granted it, but the forged survey gave him leverage. If Karen fought back, her fraud would be exposed, and she'd lose more than land. Imagine yourself watching this unfold, the quiet landscaper outmaneuvering the HOA queen, his tools now those of strategy and law. By week's end, Daniel filed his claim, the paperwork, a quiet thunderclap in Willow Creek's saga. The neighborhood buzzed with anticipation, the scent of change mingling with the jasmine that still bloomed along Elm Street. Karen's stake remained, but its presence felt hollow, a relic of a battle she was losing. Daniel stood on his porch, the evening breeze cool against his skin, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The rhythm of his life had changed, hardened by conflict, but buoyed by community. The land grab plan was set, but the war was far from over. The dusk settled over Willow Creek like a heavy curtain, the sky bruised with streaks of purple and orange. The air carried the sharp temps of burning leaves from a distant bonfire, mingling with the faint hum of evening crickets. Elm Street, once a canvas of suburban calm, now pulsed with an undercurrent of unrest. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of Daniel Harper's yard, the cedar fence looming in the twilight, its wood scarred from weeks of tension. The orange ribbon on Karen Whitaker's stake fluttered weakly, a tattered flag in a war that was about to erupt into chaos. Daniel's adverse possession claim had been filed, and the neighborhood held its breath, waiting for the storm to break. Karen's response came swiftly, as if she'd been coiled and ready to strike. The morning after Daniel's filing, a county surveyor arrived, summoned by Karen's frantic calls. She stood on her lawn, her arms crossed, her navy blazer replaced by a crimson sweater that seemed to mirror her fury. The surveyor, a wiry man named Tom, paced the disputed line, his tape measure glinting in the sunlight. Neighbors gathered, their murmurs a low hum, like bees sensing danger. The Patels filmed from their porch, Mrs. Callahan clutched her cardigan, and even Mr. Henderson watched, his loyalty to Karen fraying like the ribbon itself. Tom's verdict was a blow to Karen's campaign. "The fence is on Mr. Harper's property," he announced, his voice flat but authoritative. "Your survey, Ms. Whitaker, doesn't match county records." The words hung in the air, heavy with the scent of damp grass and Karen's lavender perfume, now cloying in its intensity. Her face contorted, a mask of disbelief cracking into rage. "This is a conspiracy," she screamed, her voice shattering the morning's fragile peace. "You're all against me." She lunged toward the stake, yanking it from the ground and brandishing it like a weapon, its metal tip glinting ominously. Daniel, standing by his fence, remained still, his weathered hands steady despite the chaos. But Karen's outburst was only the beginning. That afternoon, she escalated, her tactics veering into the unhinged. She arrived at Daniel's property with a crowbar, her heels sinking into the soft earth as she attacked the fence. The wood splintered under her blows, each strike echoing like a gunshot through Willow Creek. Neighbors gasped, phones raised to capture the madness. The scent of cedar filled the air, sharp and raw, as Daniel's dogs howled from the backyard. Their voices a frantic chorus. "Stop, Karen," Daniel shouted, striding toward her. His voice was a low growl, the first crack in his calm facade. She swung the crowbar wildly, narrowly missing his shoulder, her eyes wild with desperation. The crowd surged forward, the Patels shouting for someone to call the police. Mrs. Callahan, clutching her phone with trembling hands. The scene was a tableau of chaos, the evening light casting long shadows that danced across the torn earth. Imagine yourself there, the air thick with tension, as Karen's attack turned the property dispute into a battlefield. The confrontation reached its peak when Karen, fueled by rage, lunged at Daniel. The crowbar slipped from her grip, clattering to the ground, but her fists flew, striking his chest with surprising force. Daniel staggered, his boots scuffing the dirt, but he caught her wrists, his grip firm but restrained. Blood trickled from a scratch on his cheek, a thin line of crimson that glistened in the fading light. "Enough," he said, his voice a quiet thunder that silenced the crowd. Karen froze, her breath ragged, her sweater stained with dirt and sweat. For a moment the world seemed to pause, the scent of torn earth and cedar hanging between them. The police arrived minutes later, their sirens a jarring intrusion into Willow Creek's rhythm. 2 officers, their faces stern, separated Karen and Daniel, taking statements as neighbors whispered in huddled groups. The air was heavy now, the bonfire's smoke drifting closer, its acrid bite a fitting backdrop to the scene. Karen's defiance crumbled under the officer's scrutiny, her voice shrinking to a petulant whine. "He's stealing my land," she insisted. But the surveyor's report and the crowd's testimony painted a different story. She was released with a warning, but the damage was done. Her reputation lay in tatters, her control over the HOA slipping like sand through her fingers. Daniel, bloodied but unbowed, stood firm through the ordeal. The scratch on his cheek stung, but his resolve burned brighter. He refused to press charges, a decision that surprised the Patels, but earned a nod of respect from Mrs. Callahan. "This isn't about her," he told Clara later, his voice steady over the phone. "It's about my home." Clara, her tone crisp as ever, urged him to push forward with the adverse possession claim. "She's unraveling," she said. "Now's the time to strike." The scent of antiseptic lingered in Daniel's kitchen. As he cleaned his wound, his mind already turning to the next move. The neighborhood, galvanized by the brawl, rallied tighter around Daniel. The fence fighters group chat buzzed with plans, testimonies, petitions, calls to replace Karen as HOA president. Mrs. Callahan baked him a casserole, its warmth a quiet gesture of solidarity. The Patel's son posted the video online, its views climbing as Willow Creek's saga went viral. The air in the neighborhood shifted, carrying the scent of change, like rain after a drought. Karen's stake was gone, discarded by the police, but her shadow lingered, a reminder of the war still raging. Karen retreated to her house, her curtains drawn, but her silence was deceptive. Late at night, neighbors heard the clink of glass bottles, the low murmur of her voice on the phone. She was plotting, her desperation a coiled spring ready to snap. Daniel, meanwhile, fortified his position. He repaired the fence, its new planks gleaming under the moonlight, a symbol of his defiance. His dogs slept closer to the house now, their presence a comfort in the uneasy quiet. The property brawl had left Willow Creek scarred, its residents bound by a shared struggle. Imagine yourself walking these streets, the rhythm of their lives, altered, hardened by conflict, but buoyed by unity. Daniel's stand against Karen had been bloody, but it was a turning point. The war was far from over, but the tide was turning, and the neighborhood braced for the final blower revelation that would unravel Karen's scheme and bring her to her knees. The dawn broke over Willow Creek with a fragile calm, the sky a pale canvas streaked with wisps of pink. The air carried the clean scent of dew-soaked grass, a faint reprieve from the acrid memory of bonfire smoke and splintered cedar. Elm Street lay quiet, its lawns pristine but its soul battered, the rhythm of its residents' lives forever altered by the war between Daniel Harper and Karen Whitaker. Imagine yourself walking past Daniel's fence, its fresh planks glowing softly in the morning light, a testament to his resilience. The orange ribbon was gone, but Karen's shadow lingered, a specter of chaos waiting to strike. The neighborhood, united behind Daniel, sensed the end was near. But none could predict the stunning twist that would unravel Karen's empire. The days following the brawl were tense, the air thick with anticipation, like the hush before a thunderstorm. Daniel, his cheek now healed to a faint scar, pressed forward with his adverse possession claim, guided by Clara's steady hand. The county scheduled a hearing, and Willow Creek buzzed with preparations. The fence fighters group chat overflowed. With support, Mrs. Callahan drafted a petition to oust Karen as HOA president, while the Patels gathered affidavits from neighbors detailing her overreaches. The scent of fresh ink and coffee filled Daniel's kitchen as he reviewed documents, his resolve as unyielding as the earth beneath his boots. Karen, meanwhile, emerged from her self-imposed exile, her demeanor a chilling blend of defiance and desperation. She knocked on doors, her heels clicking like a metronome, her voice syrupy as she spun tales of victimhood. "Daniel's trying to ruin me," she told Mr. Henderson, her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. But her charm had worn thin. Even Henderson, once her staunchest ally, mumbled excuses and closed his door. The air around her house seemed stale, heavy with the clink of glass bottles and the faint hum of late-night phone calls. Karen was plotting, but her grip on Willow Creek was slipping, her kingdom crumbling under the weight of her lies. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, like a crack in a dam. Clara, digging deeper into county records, uncovered a bombshell. Karen's deed to her property was a forgery. The document, filed years ago when she'd bought her home, bore inconsistencies, signatures that didn't match, a notary seal that didn't exist. Clara's voice crackled with excitement over the phone. "This isn't just a fake survey, Daniel. Her entire claim to her land is built on fraud." The revelation was staggering, a key that unlocked the madness of Karen's campaign. Imagine yourself hearing this news, the scent of victory mingling with the jasmine that still bloomed along Elm Street. Daniel and Clara moved swiftly, presenting the forged deed to the county. The hearing, held in a sterile courtroom that smelled of polished wood and old paper, became a reckoning. Neighbors packed the benches, their faces a mosaic of hope and outrage. Karen arrived in a tailored suit, her composure a brittle mask, but her eyes darted nervously, betraying her fear. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, reviewed the evidence. Daniel's survey, the county's records, the forged deed. Each document was a nail in Karen's coffin, her lies exposed under the courtroom's harsh fluorescent lights. Daniel took the stand, his voice steady, recounting Karen's aggression, the stake, the crowbar, the brawl. "She claimed my land," he said, "but her own claim was a lie." The Patel's video played, its grainy footage capturing Karen's unhinged attack. Gasps rippling through the room, Mrs. Callahan testified, her voice trembling but firm, detailing years of Karen's HOA tyranny. The air grew heavy, the scent of justice sharp and clean. As the judge's pen scratched notes, her expression unreadable, Karen's defense was a spectacle of denial. She waved her forged deed, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "These are lies. I've lived here for years." But her words faltered under cross-examination, her story unraveling like a frayed ribbon. The notary's absence, the mismatched signatures' discrepancy, was a wound, and Karen bled credibility. Judge's gavel fell, a sound that echoed like thunder through Willow Creek's saga. Daniel's adverse possession claim was granted, awarding him a sliver of Karen's land as compensation for her overreach. More damningly, Karen's deed was declared invalid, her property ownership thrown into limbo pending further investigation. The neighborhood erupted in celebration, the air alive with the scent of grilled burgers and laughter as the Patels hosted a victory barbecue. Daniel stood quietly, a beer in hand, his dogs bounding happily across his yard. The fence, now a symbol of triumph, gleamed under the evening sun. Its cedar sent a reminder of the battle won. Mrs. Callahan hugged him, her eyes misty, while the Patel's son posted the hearing's outcome online, the video racking up thousands of views. Willow Creek's rhythm began to heal, its residents bound by a shared victory over tyranny. Karen's fall was swift and humiliating. Stripped of her HOA presidency, she faced legal scrutiny for the forged deed, her once pristine home now a hollow shell. Neighbors saw her packing boxes late at night, her silhouette framed by dim lights, the clink of glass bottles, a faint echo of her defeat. Whispers spread that she'd fabricated the deed to inflate her property's value, a scheme born of greed and arrogance. The orange ribbon found discarded in her trash was burned at the barbecue, its ashes scattered by a gentle breeze. Daniel, though victorious, remained reflective. He sat on his porch, the evening air cool against his skin, the faint scar on his cheek a badge of survival. It wasn't about the land, he told Clara, his voice soft. It was about home. The neighborhood, scarred but stronger, began to rebuild. New HOA elections were planned, with Mrs. Callahan tipped to lead. The Patels' garden bloomed brighter, their sons' videos now celebrating Willow Creek's resilience. The constant struggle had forged a community, its rhythm no longer one of fear but of hope. Imagine yourself leaving Elm Street, the stars bright above, the scent of jasmine lingering in the air. The war was over, its chaos a memory etched into the earth. Karen's forged deeds had been her undoing, her empire of lies reduced to ashes. Daniel's victory was more than legal, it was a reclaiming of peace, a testament to the quiet strength that had carried him through. Willow Creek would never be the same, but in its scars lay a new beginning, a story of triumph that would echo long after the last box left Karen's driveway.